Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub, here today with Brittany Mellinger from LHOP. We haven't seen her in a long time. Hello there, Brittany.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. So let's talk about something we haven't talked about yet. Remember, our conversations with Brittany are all about fair housing and all the ways that that shows up. And today we're going to be talking about mobile homes. And if you're like me, I made big assumptions about mobile homes. And I was wrong on every single one of those, which is fantastic because it's good to have an expert here to talk to us about that. Mobile homes are different than owning a home, and they're different from renting an apartment. So here we go. Brittany, talk to us about how everything is different.
All right. I'm going to start out by just a quick disclaimer. You've probably heard me say this before, but I cannot give you legal advice because I am not an attorney. I'm just providing you some basic information about your rights. If you have a specific question after we're done, you can always call our office, but depending on the situation, we may need to refer you to a lawyer for further assistance.
Yep.
Disclaimer over.
Good.
So there is a piece of legislation in Pennsylvania that protects residents of mobile home parks. It's called the Mobile Home Parks Rights Act. It was first passed in 1976, and it's been amended a couple times since then. So why is there a separate act for this? Don't we have the Landlord-Tenant Act?
Right.
Well, if you own your mobile home, you're basically a homeowner, but you don't own your land. So you rent the land and own the home. So that puts you in this weird category in the middle. So whereas like a typical tenant might be able to just pick up and move if their lease is terminated, it's not so simple when you've got a mobile home. You may not be able to even move it depending on the conditions. And this is really important for folks to know their rights around this too, because oftentimes in an area that might not have a lot of affordable housing, mobile homes basically function as affordable housing because you only have to pay a certain amount for lot rent, and there can be some more flexibility around that than if you were in an affordable housing complex.
Right.
So this act does not cover everybody that lives in a mobile home. So if you lease your mobile home from the landlord, so the payment that you make covers both the use of the mobile home as well as the use of the land, then you would not fall under this piece of legislation. You would fall under the regular Landlord-Tenant Act because you're basically renting a unit.
Okay, that totally makes sense. All right, good.
So if you own your home, your mobile home, or manufactured home, those terms are used interchangeably, then you would be covered under this.
Okay.
You would also have to be in a mobile home park that has 3 or more mobile homes located on it. So if you're only on a piece of the land with 2, you may not, this may not qualify, or you may not be qualified under this piece of legislation.
Right, and that gets really complicated because that's about land use, and that's about how it's zoned, and that's about a whole other set of stuff. So right, so we'll just cross that off the list, right? And if you're in that situation, please call LHOP because they could probably figure something out because there's a lot of things out there. All right, fabulous.
Right, so you would still have protections under the Landlord-Tenant Act.
Right.
Even if you don't have protections under the Mobile Home Parks Rights Act.
Perfect.
So let's talk about eviction. Everyone's favorite topic.
Right, right. It's a horrible thing, but we're all talking about it right now. All right, so if you are a person who owns your mobile home and you pay lot fees or whatever that's called every month,
yep,
can you get evicted for non-payment of rent, like we're talking about with people who have like apartments or people who have who own their home and pay mortgage?
So you can be evicted for non-payment of rent.
Okay.
They need to give you ample notice. So it actually changes by the time of year. So between April and September, they would need to give you 20 days written notice. Between September and April, it's 30 days.
I was hoping it'll be a little bit longer, but okay. All right, I understand that.
And just like if you were renting an apartment, self-help eviction is not legal. So they couldn't choose to turn off your utilities if you weren't able to move out in that period, they couldn't padlock your unit, they would have to go through the court eviction process in order to be able to evict you from your home.
Okay. All right.
Now, if you are renting a typical apartment, you know, you can receive a notice if you violate your lease, and they can start the eviction process that way.
Right. If
However,
you're too loud, you have some loud party, and then you get a notice that says you had a loud party. You know you're not allowed to have a loud party. You've been warned. Now you're going to get evicted.
right, so
Okay.
they can do that.
Right.
If you are in a mobile home, then you need a second lease violation within 6 months in order for them to terminate your lease based on a lease violation. So you can either do the
Oh.
same thing twice, like if you're cited for having a pet that you're not allowed to have, and if they cite you twice within 6 months, then they can go ahead and proceed.
Okay.
Or it could be two separate things. It could be a pet and a noise violation, something like that. But they need to have that second violation in place.
Okay. All right. All right. That's a lot to think about. Okay.
So your lease could also be terminated if there was a change in the use of the parkland, or if the mobile home park closed, you know, then they could also let you know that you have to leave as well.
Oh, right. Right. Okay. I totally get that. Right. There's the owner dies and the estate doesn't want to keep the mobile home park, so they're going to close it. So that means everybody who lives there needs to find somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
Like that would be like a really easy example of how that would work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One interesting clause, and one that's really helpful, is that a mobile home resident cannot be evicted if they have proof that the rules of the park aren't being enforced for all residents. So if you were given 2 notices and eviction proceedings started for you because you had a pet, but someone down the street from you at the same mobile home park has a pet, and you have proof of that, you can bring that to the magistrate and let them know. And they should throw out that proceeding. Now, if this is the case, I would always encourage you to get legal advice, to speak to an attorney about this, because you always want to be prepared with that when you're going into court. But that's an important protection,
Right.
Because everyone should be treated equally.
Right.
Now, if you have a mobile home, you are responsible for the condition of the interior of your home because you own the home.
Right.
But the mobile park owner is responsible for providing any utilities that are specified in the lease, and they need to be provided in accordance with state and local regulations. So if something happens to your water and you no longer have clean drinking water that's coming into your home, you know, you would have the right, after you gave proper notice and allowed reasonable time for repair, you could choose to withhold rent, to repair and deduct, or to terminate your lease early and move.
Oh, okay. So in that regard, it's a lot like being a tenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
it's very similar.
Yeah.
But the landlord's responsibilities basically end at the outside of your unit.
Okay.
Or your
All right.
home.
Okay.
They are allowed to have rules about the type of skirting, awnings, fences, you know, the outside of your unit. They can specify what materials you can use, things like that. And they should have a listing of all of the park regulations that are available to you, either posted in a central place, given to every resident there.
So that would be similar to like people who have like homeowners agreements or like home, you know, like neighborhood associations, that you can't have a fence that's higher than 6 feet, or you can't have an above ground pool, or whatever, like HOA kinds of things that happen in like other kinds of situations. You can have those same kinds of things at a mobile home park.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the landlord, much as a typical tenant would have, they can't interfere with your personal guests, you know, that come over, stay a night or two. You know, any Any interference regarding that is unnecessary and a violation of the tenant's privacy. But if they're staying for a length of time when they would be considered to be residents, like if they're staying weeks on end, then the landlord can obviously allow them to request that that they get added to the lease, get a background screening, and if that means that's moving a considerable number of folks into your unit beyond what's in neighboring mobile homes, then they may be able to add a small increase to your rent.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get that. All right.
Yeah, if you're doubling the amount of people in your unit,
Right.
there
Like,
would be
right.
costs for utilities and things like that.
Right. There's one thing to be, help out a friend and have them stay a couple of nights so that you can do it. But if they're now living with you, that becomes a whole other level. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. We get questions about rent increases. So they can only be increased at the end of the lease term. So if you're on an annual lease, that can't be more than once a year. If you have a month-to-month lease, they could theoretically issue a rent increase at any time, provided they give 30 days written notice. So that's the inherent tension in a month-to-month versus an annual lease. Like the month-to-month offers a lot of flexibility to you. You would choose to move out, need to make changes, but you also are vulnerable to more rent increases and things like that. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that just like a normal landlord-tenant relationship, the landlord is required to allow reasonable accommodations and modifications for tenants who have disabilities. So if you have a disability-related need to have a change in policy or a change in the structure of your home, they're required to make that under fair housing laws. So if you would need a ramp to be able to access your mobile home, or if you would need to have an emotional support or a service animal, they would be required to grant that as well.
Right. So you're right. This is in some areas they fall into more landlord tenant with apartment. In some areas, they fall into more homeowner. In some areas, they're totally independent and have their own rules. So, yep, this is a whole separate category of housing. Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're having any trouble understanding your rights as a resident or as a property owner of a mobile home park, please reach out. We're happy to answer any questions that we can. I also wanted to let folks know that there may be assistance that's available to you if you are falling behind on your lot rent. I know we've talked a lot on this channel about the rental assistance that's available to folks.
Yeah.
So this may actually extend to lot rent as well. So I would encourage you to either reach out to Kelly at the Hub, reach out to the Lancaster County Housing Redevelopment Authority to access any programs that you might be eligible for.
Right. I mean, it does no harm to ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And if there's money out there to be able to help you, then we will be able to get that money out there to you. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Brittany. As always, you make us smarter every time. It's wonderful.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Absolutely. See you, everybody.